Welcome, everyone, to the Happiness Journey with Dr. Dan podcast, where every journey is worth living. My name is Dr. Dan, and I'm your host for today's episode. I'm a bilingual cognitive behavior and neurolinguistic programming practitioner specializing in anger management issues, both court appointed and private, marriage and relationship coaching, dissociative disorders, narcissistic personality disorders, depression, anxiety, dream analysis, and also provide life, business, and retirement coaching support. I provide individual one-on-one sessions in both French or English, and also do group settings. If you need any assistance, reach out to DMV therapy and coaching services at 301-325-1550, and our website can be found at lifecoach.drdanamzallag.com. Today, I'm very excited to welcome a special guest, Miss Lauren Fonvielle, as we explore how ongoing stress and anxiety impacts both the mind and body over time, and how practical tools like tapping can help ease the weight of everyday stress and restore balance. So, without further ado, and as with all of our previous episodes, I will leave it up to the guest to properly introduce herself, as no one else can do a better job. Lauren, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here with you today. So my name is Lauren Fonvielle, and I am a certified EFT practitioner and trainer. EFT stands for the Emotional Freedom Techniques, which is a process of gently tapping on certain points of the body while simultaneously acknowledging the emotions that you're feeling so that you can feel good and better in your body. That's what it's all about, feeling good, figuring out how to get there.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for being here today, Lauren. So let's explore the EFT technique, and I've heard about it. So there's actually 9 points in the body from the head to including the under the eyebrows, the chin, under the I think the elbow and other places that you have to tap a certain amount of time to be able to de-stress yourself. Is that correct? Or how does this technique work?
Yeah, so when I'm describing it to someone who's never, experienced it before, I often will compare it to acupuncture. So if you go to an acupuncturist, they take those tiny little needles and they put them in at certain points of the body. And with tapping, what we're doing is applying acupressure to some of those same points. And the points that we're tapping on are the end points of the meridians, and the meridians are how energy moves through the body. And so when we tap on these points while speaking out loud and acknowledging how we're feeling, it's helping to send a message to the amygdala in the brain, which is the part of the brain that controls fight or flight, and it helps to reduce the amount of cortisol that's pumping through the body.
So just by verbally saying that I'm okay, I should not feel this way, or you just acknowledge the feeling, or you try to, um, I would say, justify it.
So you really are acknowledging it. So sometimes people would ask me like, "Oh, are we tapping in the bad things?" And it's like, "No, that's
Yeah.
not what we're doing."
Okay.
So like for example, if you're somebody who's experiencing a lot of stress and anxiety, you would be tapping on each of these points and saying something. Well, you start on the pinky side of the hand and you would be tapping on it and saying, even though I'm feeling all this stress and anxiety, I deeply and completely accept myself. And so you would say that 3 times as you're tapping on the pinky side of the hand, and and so the first part of that sentence is acknowledging the anxiety and stress, and then the second part of that second sentence is really more of something positive or acceptance. So even though I'm feeling the stress, I deeply and completely accept myself. And then as you move through the other points, you would use what is called a reminder phrase. So you could keep it very simple and just tap on the top of the head and say, all of this anxiety, and then move to the eyebrow point. I'm feeling really anxious. And then to the side of the eye, all of this anxiety in my body. And then you move under the eye. I'm feeling so anxious. And so it's this process of acknowledging how you're actually feeling. And the purpose of that is to hold space for yourself, because as human beings, a lot of the time when there are uncomfortable emotions like anxiety, stress, sadness, anger, frustration, we don't enjoy feeling those things. Those are not the warm fuzzy feelings, and oftentimes we try to suppress them. We try to push them down and ignore them and pretend like they're not there. And I think part of that is, what society kind of tells us to do, of just keep going, work harder, just, power through. And I think when we do that, like it can help in the short term. Sure, you can distract yourself with something else and not feel the discomfort of whatever it is you're feeling. But in time, all of that stuff that you've been pushing down and trying to avoid is going to come back around, and it's going to come out in some way. And sometimes that comes out as physical pain in the body. When you're stressed and anxious, oftentimes if I ask someone, where do you feel that in your body? They'll have an immediate reaction like, oh, I feel that in my neck and my shoulders. But it's not just with stress and anxiety that we hold things physically in the body. It's really with any emotion that we haven't processed. And so this is a really gentle way of acknowledging how you feel and moving through the emotions so that you don't have to feel that, stay in that feeling of discomfort.
Okay, so all this is amazing, actually, Lauren, because I know that there's like some chart, like reflexology chart, where there's a special pressure point in the hands and on the bottom of the feet. Does the tapping technique render similar result where about the outcome, or the reflexology point primarily focus on the organs of the body, while the EFT focus more on the amygdala?
Yeah, so the points that we're tapping on are the end points of the meridians, and those meridian lines are associated with certain organs. Um, but the beauty of tapping, I think, is that it does help to reduce the cortisol levels, and there have been studies that have been done that show that cortisol can be reduced by up to 43% through the tapping process. So it's a really big number. So I think it's a combination of the two of getting the energy moving by tapping on these meridian points that yes are associated with particular organs, but also the added benefit of the reduction of the cortisol.
So, but by doing also like breathing exercise while you're doing tapping, does that aid in the reducing the cortisol level, or do you think breathing will have a much quicker effect?
Yeah, so I think, obviously we're always breathing, right? But we're not always thinking about it.
Deep
And
breathing. Definitely.
and I think that when I'm working with clients, I do like to consciously remind them to kind of focus on their breath, to take those deep inhales and those deep exhales. Because, I mean, when we are stressed and anxious and overwhelmed, we're likely not taking those full breaths. We're more likely to have shallow
Tolerated.
breath.
Shallow, yeah.
Yeah, so I definitely think that breathing is an important part of it. So after every round that I do, typically with clients, I will instruct them to take a nice deep breath in and kind of check in with how they're feeling. Ultimately, tapping is this tool that can help create this connection between the mind and the body, because oftentimes there is a disconnection there and people aren't clear about it. And when we really start to listen to what our bodies are telling us, beautiful things can happen.
Oh, that's for sure. So, how many points are they? Are they 9 points, or is it
So there are more than that. Like, I mean, so part of the main protocol is the 9 points, but just like how if you go to the acupuncturist, there are lots of different points that they
yes?
can put needles in. There are other points that you might find if you watch, let's say, YouTube videos with people tapping. You might find additional points that aren't part of the typical protocol, but yeah, for the typical protocol, the points are the pinky side of the hand, which is where we start. Then we move up to the crown of the head. And I always tell people you can tap with two hands or you can tap with one, that there's really no wrong way of doing this. And if you are feeling uncomfortable tapping on any point, you can skip over it, right? I've worked with some clients that have had fibromyalgia, and so sometimes the act of actually tapping on a point can be uncomfortable for someone. So you also have the option of just applying pressure and like giving yourself a little massage in each of these points as well. So
Mhm.
the top of the head, and then we move to the start of the eyebrow, and then we go to the side of the eye. And you can also notice as we're going through the points, are there any points that you naturally touch during the day? So the side of the eye point, for example, that could be a point that you naturally go to. Let's say if you're feeling stressed or overwhelmed, it's pretty common for people to kind of come to the temples and just give themselves a little massage. And again, doing this is sending that message to the amygdala to say you don't need to be creating all of that cortisol, you don't have to be in fight or flight, and slowly it reduces the amount of cortisol in the body. So then we move on to underneath the eye, and then underneath the nose, between the bottom of the nose and the lip, and then the chin crease, and then the collarbone. So it's really the fleshy part underneath the collarbone on both sides. So you can use both hands here on either side,
Mhm.
or you can bring one hand to the center of the chest and really spread the index finger and the thumb widely apart and use one hand and tap, and you'll get both of those points. And then the next point is under the arm, so on the side of the body. So for women, it's about the center of the bra strap on the side of the body, and for men, it's about 2.5 to 3 inches down from the armpit. And then the last point is between the pinky and the ring finger on the back of the hand. So that is the full round of tapping. But as we were just talking about, there are some other points, and I always like to share the finger points. So if you were to squeeze at the bed of the nail on any finger, it can just look like you're fidgeting. But you could always have your hand in your lap, or no one has to know that you're doing it. You're doing a little bit more inconspicuous than, let's say, if you're out in public and you start to feel anxious or overwhelmed, you might not want to be tapping on your head and have people looking at you,
Yes.
right? So if you just squeeze at those fingertips and take some nice deep breaths, it can be really, really helpful, particularly when you're out in public.
So how many times, and this I'm sure this is a question that people ask, how many times do you have to tap in the same spot?
So I always like to say that tapping is more of an art than a science. So you don't have to tap a particular number of times. What I tend to do is I'll stay on one point for the length of time that I'm speaking, that I'm saying something. So if I'm on the pinky side of the hand, I'll stay there until I finish my full sentence. Or, I would say on average, probably between 7 and 10 times. But again, if one point feels really good, and a lot of the times I'll have my clients tell me that they have a favorite point, and there's no real rhyme or reason as to why it's their favorite point. It's just their favorite. It feels good. You can hang out on that point longer, or you can just have that be your go-to point in those situations where you're feeling stressed and overwhelmed, and it can be really helpful.
So is it, I mean, my question to you there, Lauren, is that when you repeat the affirmation that you are stressed, so what are the specific words that you spew out when you actually tap on the specific spot? Do you say that I do not feel stressed, I do not feel stressed, and you tap,
No.
say it?
No, so the words are important, and here's the thing. If you're feeling really stressed, right? And then you're saying, I'm not stressed, I'm not stressed. There's a disconnect, right? Because you actually feel stressed and you're saying that you're not. So that's really not, it's really not moving the needle very much.
Okay.
And so instead, what with tapping, what we do is we focus on how we actually feel with the intention of moving that needle towards the better thought or feeling. So I'll give you an example. Let's say that you're feeling really sad, and there's a reason why you're sad. Maybe you're grieving the loss of a loved one, right? So it's highly unlikely that you're going to go from feeling very sad to feeling happy and joyful, right?
Sure.
However, what could happen as you're tapping on the sadness, let's say, you're tapping on the side of the hand and you're saying, even though I'm feeling really sad, I'm right here right now, I'm acknowledging it. Even though I'm feeling really sad, that's how I'm feeling today. Even though I'm feeling really sad, I'm choosing to love myself through this. I'm feeling really sad, and you're moving through the points at the top of the head and on the eyebrow. I'm so sad. Onto the side of the eye, all of this sadness in my body, right? As you're going through this process, maybe you have a thought that comes up, like, yeah, I am really sad, but I have a really good support system, right? And so that is a little bit of a tick in the right direction, as makes you feel a little bit better than just acknowledging the sadness. It's like, there's the sadness, but I have this support group. Or I'm really sad, but I know I've been really sad before, and I've gotten through it, and I trust I've gotten through it. And so the idea is that we allow ourselves to feel how we're actually feeling, and we just notice the different thoughts that come up along the way,
Mhm.
and then slowly we're moving towards that better thought or feeling in an organic, authentic way that feels really true, so that eventually you will get to that place where you feel happy again. It might not be in the 1 hour session, but in time you'll get there by acknowledging how you actually feel.
Okay, so then if this is for the mental pain or the stress or anxiety and all, but now when it comes to the physical aspect of pain,
Yeah.
you talk about fibromyalgia
Yeah.
or someone who feels like, for example, there's like specific key points or on the hands such as the L14 or the PC6, where it actually is very effective when it comes to headaches or stress or nausea, it's all and all that. So if someone feels pain, well, the EFT technique works as well.
Yes. So oftentimes, when there's physical pain, there are often emotional contributors to that pain.
Mhm.
So, even when there is a reason for the pain, so let's say you were in a car accident and you broke a bone in your arm, and now every time that it rains, I don't know, you get sore in your arm, right? And maybe you think like, oh, I'm going to just have to deal with this for the rest of my life.
Mhm.
But it can also affect, it can cause anxiety, right? Because maybe there's something that you want to do. Maybe you want to go play a sport with a friend, but you're nervous that if you go and do that, then
You
you're going
break
to
it
be
again.
late. Yeah, you'll break it again, or you'll be laid up in bed for weeks, and so you don't take that action. And so tapping is great in that you can begin by focusing on the physical sensation and describing where it is in the body, what it feels like, and tapping on the discomfort there. And then again, it's this process of noticing what comes up, noticing where the mind goes. I mean, and I can give you some examples. I had a client who was dealing with a lot of pain in the shoulder. And
Mhm.
as a practitioner, one of the first things I always ask is like, have you gone to the doctor, right? Like, is it something that that you've gotten checked out? And she had gone to the doctor, and she had a bunch of scans done and tests done, and everything has come back normal time and time again. And she was dealing with this chronic pain in her shoulder. And so we started tapping on it, and I think she first described it as this stabbing pain in her shoulder. And so we're tapping and saying something like, even though I have this stabbing pain in my left shoulder, that's just what I've been dealing with. And I have this stabbing pain in my left shoulder.
Was it
And then,
rotator cuff?
I'm sorry?
Did rotator cuff injury?
No, she had no injury there. It was just, she was just dealing with this chronic pain, and the doctors couldn't find any reason for it. And so we keep tapping on it, and I'm asking her, I think one of the questions, as a practitioner, my job is to, be curious and ask questions. And at one point, I asked her if the pain reminded her of anything, or if there are other words that she would use to describe it. And it was like a stream of consciousness kind of moment. And she just said, it feels like I'm being strangled. And I was like, "Oh, I don't know where this is going to go." And so we kept tapping, and we used those words. It feels like I'm being strangled. And then when we got through that round, and she surprised herself when she said that. She's like, "Oh, I don't even know where that came from." I'm like, "Okay." And then I asked her, "Well, how long ago did this pain, first? When did this pain first start? How long have you been dealing with this for?" And then she had said, about 2 years prior. And I said, "Well, was there anything going on in your life at that time?" And it was like at that moment that a little light bulb went off. And she said, that's when I left my husband. And she's been dealing with fighting for custody and court battles, and turns out there was physical abuse, but she had never put it together. And simply by acknowledging that, once that kind of came to her mind and acknowledging that, there was a shift in the pain level. So, obviously every case is different, but that's just an example of how there was some emotional stuff that was going on in everything that she was dealing with this divorce, that had been stuck in her shoulder.
So when doctors cannot really, I mean, figure out, especially in cases of fibromyalgia, where this is the typical diagnosis when doctors don't know where the pain is coming from, and just this is what they diagnose you with. So is it primarily the mental aspect that causes something that is very hard to physically find on any of the tests that you do, either see MRIs or CAT scan, etc.?
I mean, sometimes perhaps, but like, I mean, I think because it can also help when there is a reason for the pain, when there is like something that, some sort of accident that happened, and you're in the pain. But I mean, I think it can, but at the same time, there can be anxiety. There can be anxiety when there's any type of pain. So, I mean, I think it's just a case by case basis. I think it depends.
So, but I mean, obviously, the body and mind are interconnected, and
Yeah.
when especially now when we go to the doctor, There's actually in the past there was not, but now there's a section about mental health. If you're dealing with depression, if you're dealing with anxiety, because then now the doctor have the responsibility to be able to understand not just the physical aspect of whatever you're dealing with, but also the mental one, because one follows the other. So if
Yeah.
it's important to kind of like cover all bases, especially when it comes to physical illnesses and all. So,
Yeah.
okay, when it comes to now the EFT, so how long does it take, Lauren, for people to start feeling or experiencing changes, positive changes, that is? Do
Mhm.
they have to do it every day? Do they do it only per needed basis? How does that work?
Yeah. So I'll say first that this is a practice that can be used both proactively and reactively. So you can use it on a daily basis as part of your just daily self care. And then you can use it reactively in those moments where you're feeling really, really stressed and overwhelmed.
Mhm.
So if you have an issue that has been like an ongoing issue and you've been dealing with it for a long time, it might take a little bit longer to get to the point where you feel a difference. Whereas if it's something that's newer and you're exploring it with tapping, it could happen faster. Again, it really is dependent upon the person, and it's also really dependent upon your readiness for healing. And I know that that can be a really kind of sticky subject, because if you talk to anybody that's in pain, whether that pain be physical or emotional, and you ask them if they are ready, if they're ready for healing, you'd be hard pressed to find someone that says no, right? So um, but what I mean by readiness for healing is your ability to really kind of step back and look at things a little bit differently. So I had a client who actually, it wasn't even a client. It was at a workshop that I was doing, and I asked for a volunteer. And this was actually at a fibromyalgia support group.
Okay.
And this woman was dealing with a lot of knee pain over the last like 3 days. So much so that she really wasn't doing anything. She was just spending her time on the couch. And while we're tapping, I'm asking her, we're tap first. We start tapping on the pain, this tight pain in her knees. We're tapping on how it makes her feel that she has this pain, right? Like she's frustrated with it. It's a limiting pain. It's not allowing her to do the things that she wants to do. And at some point during this, I ask her, is there any sort of benefit for you being in this pain? And instead of just saying no, like, no, absolutely not, there's no reason for, no benefit to me, she really paused and she thought about that. And she said, well, because I'm in this pain, my children are coming to visit me more often. And so
Ah.
that opened a doorway for us to talk about, okay, is there a fear that if you are well, it's going to shift your relationship with your children? And we didn't tap for that much longer, and all of a sudden she's just like, now she was completely new to tapping. She had never even heard of it before coming to the support group. And she was like, I don't know what's happening. The pain in my knees isn't there. What's going on? And I was like, well, that's amazing. I'm like, what are you gonna go do now that you're not dealing with the pain right now? And she said, I'm gonna go wash the dishes. And I was like, that is not what my first choice would have been. But I think because she was in so much pain and she'd been sitting on that couch for most of the week and the dishes were piling up, that's just what she wanted to do. But simply by acknowledging the fact that there was some fear there in these shifts with her relationship with her children, the pain began to shift.
So it was deliberate that she put herself mentally into this position so she could actually better their relationship with the kids. But in reality, the pain came from nowhere. I mean, it's of course, if you sit on the couch all week long, your muscle will atrophy, which you're not going to have enough, I would say, strength to be able to carry on your body. But
Right.
eventually, the thing is that this is something that she did to herself. I mean, it's not like she had any injury, did she?
I mean, not that I'm aware of. I mean, but the thing is with like fibromyalgia. I mean, I do think the pain is real. I don't think that like it's like imaginary. These people are really experiencing pain. Now, where the pain like originally generated from, I mean, that's hard to say. But I'm just grateful that she was able to to kind of acknowledge it, and in doing so there was a shift. Because I mean, I don't think people, obviously people don't want to be in pain, but they don't realize what they don't know,
Oh, that's true. You're right. So,
Yeah.
so how long does it take? I mean, how many sessions does it take, Lauren, for people to start really having like this woman after the first, I would say, workshop, she felt that the pain was gone and she was able to resume her activity level. But most of the time, people who are dealing with this fibromyalgia, that is actually a pain that is very hard to get rid of.
Yeah.
Um, how long does it take for EFT to really start working?
Yeah. And it's not, I will say that it's not a one and done type thing, right? They call it a practice for a reason because, we get triggered, we have things going on in our life, and so we do have to continue the practice, and it's learning what our body's trying to tell us and communicate with us, and tapping can help you in figuring that out. I mean, so again, it depends on the person and the issue that they're dealing with. However, on average, I like to work with clients for approximately 8 weeks, because I have found that 8 weeks seems to be the sweet spot for people to not only feel comfortable with knowing how to tap on their own. It's always my intention to really help people feel comfortable in doing this work on their own, but also that it's enough time for them to see and feel a difference themselves.
Beautiful. Well, I am sure that a lot of our listeners who are dealing with whatever physical pain or even emotional pain, come to think of it, I mean, someone who's going through like grievance or anything of that sort, they would need to be able to definitely use the EFT technique to be able to kind of like alleviate their pain. So, how can people find you, Lauren, and just in case, or if you have any material either on YouTube that shows in a visual way how to be able to tap?
Yeah. So you can find me on my website, which is mindshiftwithlauren.com. And then I also have a YouTube channel, which is also Mind Shift with Lauren. If you just search for that, you can find me. I have a bunch of YouTube videos with lots of different tapping resources on there on a variety of different subjects. And then I do have a free community that is called the Mind Shift Community. So if you just go to the mindshiftcommunity.com, and I connect with people in there and can answer questions, and we do tapping stuff together. And yeah, so I would love to connect with anybody who's interested in learning more.
And how much does it usually range, the service for EFT? I mean, especially with your assistants.
Yeah, well, it's really dependent on what works best for the client. So, if the 8 week program, or because I have so many different offers, so it's about connecting with the client and figuring out what is going to be of service for them.
Beautiful. Well, Lauren, unfortunately, that is all the time that we have for today's podcast. And again, thank you sincerely for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us. And we all appreciate your participation to this episode by sharing with us the benefits of tapping techniques to help us ease daily stresses and live a more productive life. So, to our millions of listeners out there, we thank you for being here today. And we're very also excited of what's ahead in season 33 of the Happiness Journey with Dr. Dan podcast, featuring a lineup of incredible guests with powerful stories that will continue to uplift and inspire all of you. Now, here are some concluding words of wisdom. Ongoing stress and anxiety don't just live in the mind, they quietly reshape the body over time. What begins as mental tension can turn into fatigue, pain, and emotional disconnection if left untreated. The powerful truth is that healing doesn't require overwhelm. It begins with awareness and small, intentional tools. Practices like tapping gently interrupt the stress response and remind the nervous system that it is safe to slow down. Each moment of regulation creates space for clarity, resilience, and calm. When the body feels supported, the mind can finally exhale. Balance isn't something you chase, it's something you restore, one mindful practice at a time. My name is Dr. Dan Amzallag, and you may all keep pursuing your amazing journey in life. Stay tuned for our next episode.